Listen, I don't say this lightly. I've been in this market long enough to see waves come and go, hype cycles rise and fall, and projects that everyone swore were the future end up vanishing into nothing. But XRP is different. I urge you, and I mean this with all the urgency I can put into words, buy XRP before it's too late. Not financial advice, of course. You should always do your own research. But when I look at where the world is heading in 2025, when I see the way central banks, payment providers, and even regulators are now moving, it's impossible for me not to see XRP as the centerpiece of this next financial transformation. Let me set the stage. Right now, the world is going through one of the biggest resets in history. You've probably seen the headlines. Interest rates being adjusted, central banks trying to balance inflation with economic stability, new trade agreements forming, and the quiet but steady rollout of central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. And in all of this chaos, one theme keeps emerging. The future of money will be digital, borderless, and instant. Now, who is sitting right at the heart of that conversation? It's Ripple and XRP. This isn't just me speculating. In 2025 alone, we've seen ripple effects, no pun intended, across the financial world. Ripple Labs has announced new corridors in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, making international settlements faster and cheaper than ever before. And think about it, those are regions where remittances are lifelines. Families depend on money being sent back home from relatives abroad. Right now, a huge chunk of that gets eaten up by fees. XRP fixes that. And while everyone is still busy arguing about Bitcoin's ETF inflows or Ethereum's staking yields, there's a quieter revolution happening with XRP. Banks don't just like XRP, many of them need it. They've been testing, integrating, and quietly rolling it out behind the scenes. And now, with the U.S. legal clarity after Ripple's partial court victory last year and the follow-up rulings earlier this year, the road is finally clear for mainstream adoption. That's why I say it again. Buy XRP before it's too late. Not because it's just another coin on the market, but because it's infrastructure. It's plumbing for the new financial system. And when the pipes are laid down and the world realizes XRP is the highway money moves on, you won't want to be the person looking back wishing you had taken action sooner. Now, let's dig into why XRP's time is right now. The question I get most often is, why XRP now? Why not wait? Why not just stick with Bitcoin or Ethereum? And my answer is simple: timing. Timing is everything in this market. If you rewind just a few years, XRP was stuck in limbo. The lawsuit with the SEC cast a massive shadow over it. Institutions were hesitant. Exchanges delisted it. Investors fled to safer coins. For a while, it looked like XRP was buried under regulatory uncertainty. But what happened in 2023 and 2024 changed everything. Ripple didn't just fight back. They won key legal victories that established XRP is not a security in and of itself. That ruling sent shockwaves across the entire crypto industry. Suddenly, the coin everyone had written off was back on the table. And fast forward to 2025, we're now in a different reality altogether. Just this year, reports from the Bank for International Settlements, BIS, and the International Monetary Fund, IMF, have highlighted the urgent need for cross-border payment solutions. The old SWIFT system? It's outdated. Transactions take days. Fees stack up. Errors are common. And in an age where we can send an email in seconds across the globe, waiting 3 days for money to clear makes no sense. That's exactly the problem XRP solves. We've already seen RippleNet expand its partnerships with banks in Brazil, the Philippines, and even Europe. In fact, earlier this year, Ripple inked a deal with several European financial institutions to pilot cross-border settlements using XRP as the bridge currency. This isn't theory anymore. It's happening. And here's the part most people are sleeping on. The remittance market is massive. We're talking about over $700 billion in yearly flows globally, with Africa and Asia leading the way. If XRP captures even a fraction of that market, we're not talking about small gains. We're talking about a complete revaluation of what XRP is worth. Let's make this real. Imagine a worker in Dubai sending money back to their family in Nigeria. Today, if they go through Western Union or a traditional bank, they lose maybe 7 to 10% in fees. With XRP, that transfer is nearly instant, and fees? Just a fraction of a cent. Multiply that use case by millions of families worldwide, and you start to see why XRP isn't just another crypto. It's a necessity. Now, add to that the push toward CBDCs. More than 130 countries are exploring or actively developing central bank digital currencies as of 2025. Guess what? Ripple has been in conversations and partnerships with dozens of them. They've built pilots, tested infrastructure, and shown governments how XRP can be the bridge asset that connects different CBDCs to one another. This is where the phrase "before it's too late" comes in. Once these systems are live and running, once banks and governments lock in their partnerships, XRP won't be something you can casually pick up at today's prices. It'll be priced in as global infrastructure. So why XRP now? Because the window is closing. And I don't want you to miss this wave, so like this video, share it with your friends, colleagues, and anyone you care about, because this is the future. Why XRP stands apart. Now look, whenever I talk about XRP, the first pushback I get is always the same. Well, what about Bitcoin? What about Ethereum? Why should I put my money into XRP instead of the two biggest coins in the market? And I always say, you've got to stop thinking about these assets as if they're competing for the same role. They're not. Bitcoin, Ethereum, and XRP are not playing the same game. Bitcoin is digital gold. It's a store of value. It's not fast, it's not cheap, but it's secure and scarce. That's its lane. Ethereum is a decentralized world computer. Powers DeFi, NFTs, smart contracts, decentralized apps. That's its lane. But XRP is the bridge. It's the neutral asset that sits in between currencies, between banks, between CBDCs, between payment providers. It's not trying to be gold. It's not trying to be a smart contract platform. It's trying to move money, instantly, globally, securely, and cheaply. And here's what makes XRP unique. It was designed for this role from the beginning. Unlike Bitcoin, which burns energy through proof of work, or Ethereum, which is still working on scaling even after moving to proof of stake, XRP transactions settle in about 3 to 5 seconds. The cost? Literally fractions of a cent. The network can handle 1,500 transactions per second today, and it's scalable to tens of thousands. That puts it right in the ballpark with Visa and MasterCard. Now let's zoom out and think about adoption. Ethereum's adoption has been huge, but it's mainly been driven by crypto-native activity. DeFi, NFTs, staking. Those are important, but they still live within the crypto bubble. XRP, on the other hand, is being driven by banks, remittance providers, and now central banks. That's the traditional system, trillions of dollars moving every single day. This is why, in 2025, analysts are starting to talk about XRP differently. You'll see headlines saying, XRP isn't a competitor to Bitcoin, it's a complement. Or reports from Santander, Standard Chartered, and SBI Holdings saying XRP is already proving its value in cross-border payment trials. And this is what I think people miss. XRP is not here to replace the dollar or the euro. It's not here to compete with CBDCs. It's here to be the bridge between them. Imagine you've got a digital dollar and a digital yuan. They're both tokenized, both running on separate rails. How do you exchange between them seamlessly? That's where XRP comes in. Neutral, liquid, fast, trustless. That's why I laugh when people say, oh, XRP can't compete with Bitcoin. Of course it can't. It's not even trying to. It's a completely different tool. You don't use a hammer to screw in a bolt. You don't use Bitcoin to settle international payments in real time. And here's where the opportunity comes in. Because while the world has woken up to Bitcoin, institutions are buying it up through ETFs, Wall Street is in, XRP is still under the radar. It hasn't had its breakout moment yet. But all the pipes are being laid, all the rails are being built, and when that switch flips, it's going to be explosive. Think about it. Right now, Bitcoin's market cap is over $1 trillion. Ethereum's around $400 billion. XRP? It's sitting at a fraction of that. And yet its total addressable market, cross-border payments, remittances, CBDC interoperability, is in the tens of trillions annually. That's the asymmetry. That's the bet. And this is why I keep hammering this point. Buy XRP before it's too late. Because when institutions really wake up and start flooding into XRP the way they've flooded into Bitcoin ETFs, when banks start openly holding and using XRP on their balance sheets, you're not going to be able to get in at these prices. Now let's take this a step further and talk about the regulatory clarity piece, because this is where XRP has a huge edge in 2025. Look, when we talk about the price outlook for XRP, we need to clear something up right from the start. This isn't about wishful thinking. This isn't about moon boys screaming $10,000 per coin on Twitter with laser eyes. What I'm about to share is grounded in real-world fundamentals, adoption metrics, current 2025 reports, and the trajectory of how global finance is actually moving. Now, today, early 2025, XRP has been trading in that stubborn range. We've seen it hovering under $1 for months at times, pushing up toward $1.20, sometimes $1.50 during bursts of bullish news like Ripple winning corridors in Asia, or new CBDC pilot mentions. And let's not forget back in mid-2024, after the partial legal clarity in the US, XRP spiked hard, showing us exactly what happens when a regulatory handcuff gets loosened. So what does that tell us? It tells us XRP isn't just a speculative token. The moment real utility and legal recognition meet, the market reacts. And it reacts fast. Here's the thing though, the outlook is not just about 2025. We have to think in phases. Phase 1, short-term outlook. Over the next 12 to 18 months, we're going to see the CBDC conversation explode. Already, the Bank for International Settlements published a report in January 2025 highlighting that more than 70% of central banks are actively testing or piloting CBDCs. You've got India moving toward a retail digital rupee rollout, Europe finalizing frameworks for the digital euro, and smaller nations in Africa and Latin America building corridors that need fast, cheap settlement rails. Now, who's been building those rails for years? Ripple. RippleNet is already integrated with banks in the Middle East, Southeast Asia, and Latin America. The connection is clear. The more CBDCs need interoperability, the more something like XRP fits in as the bridge asset. So in this short-term phase, I see XRP pushing back into the $2 to $3 range realistically. Not hype, but as institutions dip deeper into pilots. If we get one big country, say an EU member, officially announcing integration tests with Ripple technology, that news alone could trigger a breakout rally. Phase 2, midterm outlook. Here's where things get spicy. By 2027 or 2028, the expectation is that interoperability will be non-negotiable. You're not going to have 20 different CBDCs floating around the globe without a bridge. That bridge doesn't necessarily need to be XRP exclusively, but XRP is one of the only assets with years of compliance-first partnerships behind it. Ripple has already been in bed with institutions like Santander, SBI Holdings, and the Saudi Arabian Monetary Authority for years. Imagine scaling that up when CBDCs are mainstream. At this point, we could be talking about XRP moving into the $8 to $10 range. And listen, I don't throw that out lightly. This projection isn't because of retail hype, it's because by then, the daily settlement volume on XRPL could rival what Swift moves in corridors like remittances. If Ripple captures even 5% of Swift's daily flow, which is in the trillions, XRP needs to reflect that liquidity utility. Phase 3, long-term outlook, 2030 and beyond. Now let's stretch our vision out further. By 2030, crypto will no longer be crypto. It'll just be finance. Tokens won't be seen as speculative bets. They'll be part of the infrastructure of how money moves globally. Think about it. In 2010, nobody thought Netflix would kill cable. In 2000, nobody thought Google would replace encyclopedias. And yet, here we are. By 2030, people won't even say, "I used crypto today." They'll just say, "I sent money." And behind the scenes, assets like XRP will be moving that value. This is the Amazon moment for XRP. Remember when Amazon stock crashed in the dot-com bust, went sideways for years, and then quietly took over the world? XRP could follow that arc. Price-wise, if utility plays out as expected, $20 to $50 is not impossible by 2030. Sounds wild to some, but if you anchor it in liquidity math, it makes sense. If trillions in CBDCs, tokenized assets, and global remittances are moving through XRPL corridors, XRP needs a much higher price to handle that liquidity. Otherwise, the system breaks. And here's the kicker. This isn't me being a dreamer. Analysts from Standard Chartered Bank and even consultants tied to the IMF have already suggested that bridge assets will need to rise in value to fulfill their roles. It's not about market cap hype, it's about mechanics. You can't move $10 trillion a year through an asset stuck at 80 cents. The pipes need pressure, and price provides that pressure. Future possibilities. Let's get futuristic for a second. Imagine 2030. You walk into a store in Dubai or Singapore, tap your phone, and the payment behind the scenes moves through XRP rails, instantly swapping from a digital euro to a digital yen. Your grandkids inherit your XRP wallet, not needing to worry about private keys because by then, regulated custody and inheritance protocols are mainstream. Whole governments could be settling trade balances in XRP. China with Africa, Brazil with Europe, the United States with Mexico. Why? Because it's cheaper, faster, and neutral compared to fighting over which fiat dominates. And let's not ignore tokenization. Real estate, stocks, bonds, all tokenized by then. BlackRock has already issued tokenized funds. Add XRP into that stack, and suddenly the pipes of finance are permanently altered. Risks and reality checks. Of course, I need to be real. Nothing is guaranteed. Regulation can shift. Competitors like Stellar, XLM, or even new tech could try to eat Ripple's lunch. But the difference is this. Ripple has spent a decade building relationships, court cases, and infrastructure. That moat is hard to replicate. So even with risks, XRP remains positioned not as a speculative meme coin, but as a utility backbone for global money. And that's why when people say, "Why should I hold XRP?" The answer is simple. Because the world is moving toward a future where XRP doesn't need hype, it has inevitability on its side. Price predictions are just numbers on a screen. The real story is adoption. And if you connect those dots, you'll see why some of us are holding until our portfolio looks less like a balance sheet and more like a phone number. When it comes to price outlook and future predictions for XRP, this is where things get really interesting. Because unlike a lot of tokens that rely purely on speculation, XRP's price trajectory is deeply tied to adoption. Every new partnership Ripple secures, every corridor that opens up, every regulatory win, it all adds real-world utility that feeds directly into demand. Now, short-term, we're still going to see volatility. That's crypto. We might dip, we might pump, and traders will play those swings. But the long-term story, that's where XRP holders should be paying attention. As institutions begin using XRP for settlement, you're going to see a supply squeeze. Remember, out of the 100 billion total supply, a huge portion is locked in escrow. Combine that with actual transactional demand, and you have a setup where price appreciation isn't just possible, it's inevitable. Now, let's zoom out to 2025, 2027, even 2030. By then, we're not just talking about speculative cycles. We're talking about full-scale integration. CBDCs using RippleNet. Banks leveraging on-demand liquidity. And here's the kicker. Tokenized real-world assets like real estate, stocks, bonds, potentially flowing through these same rails. That's why some analysts project XRP at $10 to $15 in the midterm if adoption scales quickly. And if you really look at 2030, some of the boldest predictions put XRP anywhere from $50 to even triple digits if it captures a significant share of the cross-border settlement market. Now, is that guaranteed? No. Nothing in this market is guaranteed. But what makes XRP unique is that it's not chasing hype. It's solving trillion-dollar problems in global finance. And that's the type of narrative that institutions buy into, governments recognize, and investors bet their future on. So, when you're thinking long-term, think utility, think adoption, and think about where the financial system is heading. Because if Ripple succeeds the way they're positioned to, XRP won't just be an investment, it'll be the backbone of how money moves globally. So here's the bottom line. We're standing at a crossroads. Right now, most people are distracted by the noise, the memes, the day-to-day price swings, the endless debates on Twitter. But when you zoom out, you see the big picture. The world is moving toward digitized money, tokenized assets, and instant settlement. And in that future, XRP isn't just another altcoin. It's a key piece of infrastructure. Whether it's CBDCs, cross-border payments, or tokenized finance, the rails Ripple has been quietly building for over a decade are starting to converge. Will there be volatility? Absolutely. Will there be critics? Of course. But ask yourself, 5 years from now, do you want to look back and say, I missed my chance when XRP was still under $5? Or do you want to be one of the people who saw the writing on the wall and positioned themselves early? Because here's the truth. By the time the headlines scream XRP is the standard, it'll be too late. The big money will already be in, the corridors will already be live, and the price you're dreaming of today will be history. That's why I say it plainly. I urge you to buy XRP before it's too late. Not financial advice. Do your research, manage your risk, but don't ignore what's right in front of you. And listen, if you found value in this conversation, if you learned something new about where XRP is heading, then hit that like button, smash subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. We've got more deep dives coming, future breakdowns, real-time updates, and interviews that cut through the hype and give you the straight picture. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's next. So, make your move, stay informed, and I'll see you in the next one.